我哋
Let's resume our hearing. Alan, would you like to continue with your questions? And then Kenneth will finish at 6:30. Mr. Yao, Undersecretary, I don't think we can complete our hearing today. We'll fix a date for another hearing. I think you should submit the documents to us as soon as possible so that we can close the chapter as soon as possible as well. Alan? Mr. Chairman, from the tendering documents, I'd like to ask whether or not my understanding is correct. The process is like this. In April 2009, the CAD passed the tendering request to the GLD. That means the first draft was prepared by the CAD. And that draft was passed to the GLD for vetting. Am I correct? Director of Government Logistics? Yes, that understanding is correct. Concerning paragraph 8, there's this heading of track record. That paragraph was actually the first draft prepared by the CAD, right? Director, perhaps I should defer to Mr. Yip. By and large, paragraph 8 was in the first draft. In the process, the GLD had discussions with the CAD. We looked at their procedures. In paragraph 8.4, the last sentence, which is in bold type A,
Government's record will not be considered further. 即係話任何建議嘅空
That means any ATM system. Oh, I've lost the Chinese version. I think I'll try to use the same wording. In paragraph 8.4, there is this sentence in English. That is, any proposed system, if without substantiated track records, will not be further considered. This sentence was passed from the CAD to the GLD, right? Director or Mr. Yip? Mr. Yip? Mr. Yip? Well, I have to read it first. In the process between the CAD and the DOJ, there were rounds of revisions. I'm not sure whether this was in the first draft. After discussion, they might want to clarify certain terms. Here, I don't have the record to show whether or not this sentence was in the first draft. Well, Mr. Chairman, you are very far-sighted. You foresaw that we could not finish today. Just now, the Director of Government Logistics said that the Secretary for Justice only participated in the process later. But according to Mr. Yip, in April 2009, when the GLD received from the user department, the CAD, the first draft of the tendering document, it sought advice from the DOJ. So whose version is more accurate? Director of Government Logistics, in the rules for procurement, if the contract price exceeds $100 million, then in the drafting process of the tendering document, the DOJ has to participate, covering terminology also. Before the break, when we discussed the sentence, we said that we received advice from the DOJ as a result of a complaint, mainly about paragraph 8. So, when we reviewed paragraph 8, we sought advice from the DOJ. Mr. Allen Leong? So, Mr. Yip, Controller Bracket Procurement from the Government Logistics Department, when we resume our hearing next time, please submit a written reply. All right. Well, I think Mr. Yip is to answer this question again. Just now, during our hearing, when we take testimony, we mentioned the content of paragraph 8.1. Paragraph 8.1 mentions Annex B, Item 3. So we also refer to Item 3 in Appendix B, Annex B. Now, Mr. Yip, paragraph 8.1 and Annex B, Item 3, Arabic numeral 3. I'd like to have Mr. Yip's confirmation on whether or not that's in the first draft from the CAD, or was this added later? If it was added later, then I'd like to know under what circumstances was this added. If you cannot answer this question now, would you please include your answer in your paper for our next hearing? Well, this was in the first draft, but some terms were revised. So basically in the first draft, there's this provision as well as Item 3 of Annex B. All right. I understand. Then I'd like to ask the DGL this question. Of course, now things are overtaken by events. Now in February 2011, when the contract was awarded, as mentioned by the DGL, she did not know of certain matters, so she would not conduct a Google search, as I did just now. All right, DGL, all these have been overtaken by events. Now, we know that, in Item 8 of the tendering document, certain requirements are included. For example, for the system, 10 years before the deadline of tendering, for at least 6 consecutive months, the system had been operated by at least 40 air traffic controllers. Now, when you put this provision into the facts, and after reading New Delhi reports that the British Prime Minister David Cameron's aircraft did disappear from the radar screen for a certain period of time, do you feel that in fact, for this tendering exercise, the professional judgment and assistance provided by the CAD was not perfect. The Director of Government Logistics should be the overseer and gatekeeper as well as controller for this tendering exercise. So how would you assess the contents of the tendering document when you knew all those facts afterwards? I'd like to have the Director's assistance. Director? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Leong. In fact, for the tendering exercise, at this juncture, we can say that it is not ideal because there's a huge slippage. Every time for a complicated, large system like this, particularly when there's slippage, whenever there are problems, we'll see what we can learn and what can be improved, such that in future, when we encounter large systems, we'll try to see how we can do better. In this tendering exercise, whenever we know that there would be a slippage, what will we do? If any professional department needs our advice, we'll try our very best to offer our advice. Even though there's slippage, we would like to complete the product, and thereafter we can discuss whether or not any improvement can be made. In this exercise, the CAD should spend all its effort on completing the tendering exercise first. Then we'll discuss with them. This applies to all departments. Procurement is not a one-off exercise. In future, there will be other procurement exercises. So after every exercise, we always discuss with the department concerned to see whether any improvement can be made such that mistakes won't be repeated. Alan? Well, I of course appreciate the attitude of the Director of Government Logistics. We don't want to waste public money. The attitude of value for money is very important. Yet, in order to assist the PAC, I wonder if the Director of Government Logistics can, at this stage, point out to us. Well, maybe you can say that this is hindsight. Given this tendering document and this way of drafting, as well as its later application to the tendering exercise, how can you avoid a repetition of mistakes, as you said? Director of Government Logistics, Mr. Chairman, if you suddenly ask me what should be improved, I will of course say that in future for large-scale tendering exercises, we at least would like to be clearer on the terms of the tender documents. Members asked about the leniency or strictness of terms and provisions in the contract. Every time when there is a complaint, we'll try to learn from the complaint. I believe the other party must be dissatisfied with something before he or she lodges a complaint. So we'll try to perfect the tender documents such that all interested bidders are clear about the rules of the game.
Well, when we conduct a tender exercise or a procurement, it's always our principle to be clear and simple, but it's easier said than done. But after every exercise, say for example where there were problems, we would find out where the problem lies, how we can clarify unclear areas in future tender exercises. Alan. I know that when it comes to the interpretation and understanding of tender documents, it was a reason for complaint. But has the PAC looked at these documents? I have, and Kenneth has as well. They are in the public domain. We can get a copy to put in our record. Perhaps I will read that first, and if need be, if I have questions, I will ask these questions. But I still have some more questions to ask. A question for the director of GLD. You are one of the many government departments that act as a gatekeeper. Well, actually, you are the gatekeeper of the many government departments that deals with tender exercises. And in this case, from the experience you learned from the tender exercise of the ATC system, what would you do if in the future there is a tender exercise with highly technical information? Would you, as the Government Logistics Department, a gatekeeper of a tender exercise, adopt a new line of thinking, having learned from this tender exercise? This ATC system is highly specialized. And as the director of government logistics indicated, members of the Central Tender Board are all engineers. You are the layman. How will you How did you learn from the experience of this tender exercise? And how will you apply this experience to future tender exercises where there is a high level of specialization and technicalities involved, in order to play your part better? We will compile the report. We will be forward-looking, hoping that other departments will learn from the experience. In a procurement or tender exercise, especially when it comes to procurement that are highly specialized, we have a clear division of labor with the professional department. When it comes to assessment of specialization and expertise, it will be done by that professional department. Say, for example, qualification assessments and specifications. We leave these specialized assessments to the professional department. And our role, as I see it, is more like a third party, an independent one. When a professional department is involved in a procurement, maybe they will have tunnel vision on their specialized areas, and they may not be familiar with the procurement principles and rules. Say, for example, we have to make sure that the wordings of a tender exercise will not be in favor of certain parties. We are the gatekeeper in this aspect. So it's important to have a clear division of labor. If we take up the professional side, the professional aspect up as well, we, of course, won't be familiar with that. But apart from the CAD, we also deal with procurement and tender exercise of many other departments. Our role has been a well-practiced one, and it's been effective. Well, it's unsatisfactory when it comes to this tender exercise. The fact that it's been delayed for so long itself is unsatisfactory. About the 6 steps and the scoring system, we have actually gone through it. It's very strict and vigorous, but we have to strike a balance because we cannot be excessively stringent. And there are always criticisms that we are too lax or too stringent. And we will reflect on ourselves as to whether we have played a neutral role. We look at the mandatory terms, we look at the critical terms, and we also look at the price. At every stage, we will see whether it is fair, where the procedure itself is fair. The one with the highest score won. And the result is that there is a delay in delivery. So from the time when the company has won to the delay, we would look at how it can be improved. In the contract management, there is also division of labor. They will monitor the progress of the contract completion. And if there are problems, we will decide whether we need to intervene and how. From 2011, when the contract was awarded, to now, there is a delay. And this is where we need to review. We need to conduct a review and whether we can do more. That's what I wanted to say. At this stage, we will let the CAD focus on dealing with the contract, and then we will deal with the tender procedure later. I would like to ask my last question on paragraph 2 under 8.1. I've asked some questions about this 3 or 4 times. It says here that it's been vetted by the GLD. The tender document that's been finalized said that the proposed ATC system will have to have 6 consecutive months of operation by 40 air traffic controller in the 10 years before the deadline of the tender. So the role of the GLD, does it include the returned tendered the return tenders, the contract awarded, and whether this requirement has been met, that is, in the 10 years prior to the end of the tender exercise, there is a 6 consecutive months when the system's been operated by 40 air traffic controllers. Was it the role of the GLD? In the assessment of tender documents, when it comes to specialized areas, it will be done by the tender assessment panel. Usually there is an assessment report, and we will look at the report to see if every of the 6 steps are complied with, and we'll also look at the number of tenderers that's been failed in every of the steps and why. Information in relation to this was set out in the report. So if we look at the memo, that is the one dated the 8th of December 2010 from the Director of GLD to the Central Tender Board. Clause 8. The procured system, does it meet the requirements of Clause 8? The duty to ensure that it does not rest with the Director of the Government Logistics Department. By this memo, it seems that the Director of GLD will comply. The report submitted to the Central Tender Board based on the report of the Tender Assessment Panel. Yes. Of course, if we have questions about the report, we will ask the professional department. Otherwise, we will respect the views of the professional department of the assessment panel, especially when it comes to the 6 areas. Kenneth, let me ask some direct questions. This batch of questions is about Clause 8. Please refer to Gen 11, the tab. Page 5. They are questions. They are answers from the CAD to PAC questions. We asked why it only took why you require 6 months? On page 5, the CAD's answer.
No less than 6 months mandatory requirements for the new ATMS tender. Now, 我想問一問呢個問題就係個 experience.
So I would like to ask about experience gained. You mean ATM? You mean AT1? You mean the experience from AT1? If not, what experience did you refer to? DG. Yes. With the commissioning of the Chulalongkorn Airport, we've been using AT1, and we know that basically 6 months is needed to test the reliability. So it's an experience based on AT1. When you change the terms, you had AT1 in mind. Let me put it to you. You had in mind that the continuation of use of AT1 is very probable. That's why you put this term in 6 months, because you've been heavily influenced by the experience of AT1. That's why you put 6 months in the document. DG, no. Yes or no? No. That's not our consideration. When we formulated the tender document, there was no option in our heads. We set out the specifications. We did not have anything in mind, anything in particular in mind. But you said that this 6 months requirement is based on experience of AT1. But it says
the tender documents of other major air traffic control system. 咁呢個係你一個 hearsay 啊，抑或你實在睇過其他國？
Is that hearsay, or you've actually referred to the tender documents of other major air traffic control systems? And what are they? Can you give us some evidence or proof? The meaning of our reply is that, well, if you refer to table 1 of the audit report, that is page 8, there are 8 tender documents apart from the main system, ATMS. The other 7 requires only 6 months.
Now, that's not the question I asked.
Other major air traffic control system， 即係我俾我意思就係話其他機場或者其他機。
So my impression is that other airports, or when other airport authorities in other jurisdictions launch a tendering exercise, I have this impression, according to your answer, that 6 months is the international practice. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is exactly what I said in my reply to Chairman and members' questions. For a major AT management system, and as far as our latest system is concerned, we have 8 subsystems. That's why we just generally call it the management system, and we set the period of time at 6 months for all of them. Yes, there must be consistency, but now, according to your answer, I'm asking whether other countries are using the same standard, that is 6 months, whether similarly in other airports traffic management system, they also have a time frame of 6 months. That is to say, he's not asking you the subsystems of your ATMS, but other ATMS
in other jurisdictions. According to our reply, for other tender documents, we also adopt 6 months. As for other jurisdictions, I'll defer to Mr. Hui. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the question. According to our understanding, for major air traffic management systems, when the system is to be replaced, the authority will issue a tender document with a similar requirement. So basically, they would require the bidder to have actual experience of running such a system. As to whether the periods of time should be 6 months within 10 years, then this is not found in other tender documents in other jurisdictions. So actually, our requirements are more stringent. We also include the handling capacity and the period of operation. So in our view, this is more stringent. Right, this is more stringent in your view. But let me come back to the implementation of Clause 8 or enforcement of Clause 8. Director of Government Logistics talked about the spirit. But in fact, SYSTEM system is all over the Clause 8. Well, let's look at Gen 17. The extract of CAD's letters to the PAC. Now the handwritten page number, page 5, please. I think what the tender assessment panel did was to approach some reference sites for information, and the reference sites were provided by the tenderers. Is that right? I'll defer to Mr. Hui to answer this question. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for the question. Just now, Dr. Leung asked about reference sites, and that's the requirements set out in Clause 8.1 and 8.3, and that reference sites should be provided. But we must bear in mind that for the reference sites under 8.1 and 8.3, they may not necessarily be the same. Sorry, didn't catch it. Not necessarily be the same. But please explain that 8.3 refers to 8.1. Sorry, let me correct. When we talk about the assessment in Stage 1, it's done under Clause 8.1, whereas in Stage 3, a number of reference sites are required, and that's in accordance with Clause 8.4. So there are two different groups of reference sites. So 8.1 and 8.4's requirements about reference sites may be different. So that means the same tenderer may provide two different groups of reference sites. Why is that? This is so peculiar. Where can we find that? Now, is it because for Auto Track 3, they quoted India, and then for other systems, they quoted other jurisdictions? Please think before you answer. Thank you, Chairman. If we read Clause 8.1, it says that the tenderer should have experience in supplying other ATMS, and in fact, the word is written in small capital letters, so that means in general they should have a handling capacity for flight plans, and there should be at least 40 air traffic controllers, and also there should be a continuous operation of 6 months within 10 years, and those may not be. Those are the requirements under Clause 8.1. So for tenderer B, the experience quoted may not be auto track 3. But as long as they have this experience, they could meet the requirement under 8.1. As for clause 8.4, the proposed system, basically it's for them to demonstrate to us the essential requirements in Part 7. It is not for demonstrating that the proposed system could meet the requirements under clause 8 point something. 8.3? What about 8.3? But 8.3 refers to 8.1. 8. Yes, I understand, but 8.3 refers to 8.1. 8.3 requires the provision of evidence. So does it mean that 8.1 is different, 8.3 is different from 8.4? This is getting really confusing. I think we need an expert to read your tender document. So that means only you people could read your tender document. I must point out that even when you say 8.1, 8.3, 8.4 may mean different reference sites, and is for your tender assessment panel to interpret the tender document. Well, Mr. Hui, please think carefully before you answer. If so, we'll need some papers to be submitted to verify your answer. Mr. Hui. Chairman, I want to point out that in your, well, perhaps DG, you should take the question. Well, because you have the duty to do so. Is it the case as mentioned by Mr. Hui? Just a yes or no answer. Basically, yes. What he said just now is correct. So, when would you adopt which approach? Because the evaluation panel, is it the director of GD? Did she agree to your approach? As I understand, the GLD basically shared our views. The director of GD, is that so? Chairman, I don't quite understand what that means. Well, clause 8.1, the reference site refers to any system. Not auto track 3, maybe even Star Trek could be possible. As long as that system has run for 10 years with at least 40 air traffic controller, it may not be related to AT3 at all. And that could meet the requirement because we're only asking for credentials of that system. And after that, with capital letter S, reference sites actually related to the system should be provided. So does that mean that the capital letter S means auto track 3, whereas for small letter S, it could be any system totally unrelated to AT3, just any system provided by the bidder? Well, any system will do, even a system for military planes, like Star Trek, I call it. Well, please explain to us, because you need to be reasonable. All of a sudden, you call this capital letter S a different system, but like the director of GL said, at the time when the tender document was issued, you were looking for a new system, so there should be consistency between, among clauses 8.1, 2, and 3, and 4. Otherwise, we can't compare oranges with apple or apple with oranges. The two are different things. If you can't answer it now, go back, show us some evidence of your explanation. Chairman, maybe we will reply in writing because this is quite complicated. Right, of course you need to answer, but we don't want you to give an answer that is inaccurate. or you might be accused of telling lies, and we might invoke the PNP requiring you to take the oath first. So don't just give us any casual answer. Well, DG, do you agree with Mr. Hoi's answer? If this is the case, you should explain clearly. You should not say one thing at one time and another next time. Chairman, let me make it clear. Because for Tenderer B, if you read the reply, it's very clear. Now, we're talking about Jan 17, the answer in page 5.
Provided by the tender to solicit users' feedback on technical, operational, and stability performance of the tenderer's system and tenderer's performance. 好啦，如果你話呢一個係8.1入邊所謂一般嘅。
So if you say that 8.1 refers to just any ordinary system, then it's totally meaningless. It doesn't help to assess the operational performance of that system. I could just call it Star Trek for New Delhi, Chennai. At that time, you did not get any reference from these jurisdictions. You got references from Canada and Germany. And then you said that on operational performance, at another stage, you again asked for references. But that's different. That's the first thing. For the reference sought from Germany and Canada, you further explained that they contain core components of the system. And I have another question for you. Who defined the SDP or FTDP, surveillance data processing or flight data processing, as the only standard for handling flight traffic plans? Is there any standard internationally? DG. Thank you, Chairman. Well, like I said just now, an ATC system is highly complex, but like I said before, there are two major components. One is flight data processor, which is mainly for processing flight plans, and the other component is surveillance data processor or flight, because there are other signals received. Well, Chairman, I don't want to hear him continue. My question is, are they core components? Are these the only core components? And my question is, if these core components are operating well, does it mean that the whole system would operate smoothly as well, according to your professional judgment? Let's say for a car, if the exhaust system is running well, does it mean that the whole car will run as well? DG? Basically, as long as an ATC system carries these two components, that will do, because they are the major components. But how would you call this an advanced system or innovative system? How innovative is it? Because all systems have these two components. Just now, Maisie said that you wanted to be innovative. We seek to be enlightened. Please do tell us. It's really difficult for us to grasp. Mr. Yao, do you understand? We don't quite understand, so please ask your department to explain to us. We give you another chance to explain. We don't understand. Now, the ATC system is a highly complex system. Be it AT3 or systems supplied by other manufacturers. Basically, a system should have two components, including the SDP, surveillance data processor, because there are other forms of data that would be fed in, like radar signal and other flight route information that may be transmitted from the aircrafts, and the data can be displayed on a radar screen, and the air traffic controllers can then check the screen and see where the aircrafts are, and then to perform the air traffic management duties. But there are other information that a controller should know. For example, he should know in advance when and where a flight would come in from, and he must do that in advance. He must plan beforehand. Well, say if there is a blackout when Cameron visits India, do you mean such a scenario? Well, Chairman, I actually have another question. I think we need time to take a break and to look to dig out information. Well, perhaps I'll ask the question now. Think about my question and answer me next time. For the reference sites for these 5 tenderers, you sent out the inquiries. But was it the case that only the successful tenderer replied to you that they had the core components, whereas for other tenderers, they supplied you with operational data related to this system, and that only tenderer B gave you information regarding the core components? Well, just say one of the 5 tenderers. Don't specify any. But it's written here. I think I need to explain here. Well, answer this simple question first. That depends when this information was required, at what stage we were. For the tender assessment, perhaps I'll defer to Mr. Hui. Mr. Hui, were you one of the panel members? No, Chairman. So who was a member? You should be familiar with all the phases of tender assessment. Well, Chairman, actually, I just want to ask one thing. Now, just now, you know, government colleagues told me that there are different phases, but I reckon that the inquiries were sent out in just in a matter of days to all tenderers for reference sites. Of course, now we cannot disclose the questionnaires of these reference sites, but we did check, and the format of these questionnaires was the same. And I hope the CAD colleagues will not try to include in their answers questionnaires sent out for reference sites on other or in other stages. Now, there are different envelopes, one being technical, the other being financial. So they need to refer to the other envelope.
So they said that at different times, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, it may be different. If that's really the case, it's unfair. So would you please go back and see whether or not that did happen? And if that did happen, did other government departments agree with you? Did you know who tenderers A, B, C, and D were? You might know, but the others didn't know. So the criteria of assessment were not clear. And then you might choose, say, tender X as reference because you preferred tender X. Mr. Chairman, I think it will take some time for us to provide an answer. All right. We have spent hours on these questions. Thank you very much for your answers. But I hope that next time when you answer our questions, please provide direct answers such that we can complete our report as soon as possible. It's very rare that we had 5 to 6 meetings for one chapter. So please simplify your answers. Thank you very much. David, thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.